Welcome, everyone, to the Coaching to Flourish podcast. And I am your host, Raj Anderson, Executive Life Coach and Coach Assessor. And I'm here with John Andrew Williams, the founder of Coach Training EDU. And I hope you've been joining us every week. We answer your coaching questions. We also look at kind of hot themes, trends, and topics in the coaching industry. And have been asked to remind everyone as well, if you do have coaching questions, please send them in to us at contact@coachtrainingedu.com. We love to hear from you. We love to answer those questions. So how are you, John?
Good. Yeah, it feels like, a lot, but that's my job, is to handle it. So yeah, good. But here we are. Happy Tuesday, everyone. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. It's part of the territory, isn't it, in owning a business?
It's fascinating. I feel like when I first started this journey, I was a teacher, and there was a journey from being a teacher to being a full-time coach. The idea of like being self-employed, and then now going from self-employed to like owning and operating an organization. Now I feel like there's another leap of building an organization that could essentially run on its own. It feels like I'm spending a lot more time organization running than actual coaching, but I still have this background and I love it. And this podcast and hopping in on sample training sessions or doing subbing every now and then, it does feed the soul. But it's a really fascinating progression, and a lot of it comes from this idea of the bigger game, which is from Laura Whitworth and Rick Tamlin. This idea that if you have a mission or vision or something that you're trying to create, you can allow that mission and vision to let you know what you need to do in order to fulfill it. And the quality of your leadership depends on the quality of the mission and vision you choose to undertake and how well you listen to what needs to get done. So I think this is a useful flipping of the paradigm of leadership in the sense, or preparation for it, which is, okay, like let's prepare you. Our traditional school system says, let's prepare you for everything and then send you out there. This way it looks at, okay, let's look out there and then ask, okay, what preparation is needed for that specific out there? And that's what I've been spending a lot of time today in.
And John, how do you continue to listen to your inner wisdom when there's so many things going on?
I'm not sure I do a great job of that all the time. I feel like there is definitely an element of clarity at times where I think, yeah, this is very clear. And a lot of it is measuring things, getting numbers on things. And then I was working with a coach, and he said, make sure that your emotion is not too far ahead of the numbers. And I love that idea, because, we have all these, situations in our mind, you go back and forth, you think, should I do this? Should I do that? Like, you just say, okay, let's look at numbers. What do the numbers say? And that's not a small thing. Like, looking at numbers can be very scary. It takes a lot. Sometimes it feels like, okay, you're going to slay this dragon. Like, I'm going to go and I'm going to spend some time getting all the numbers that I need to do, or I'm going to metric this out, and those kind of things. That is sometimes very challenging.
And I have questions around the inner critic and the imposter syndrome today.
Sweet.
And what about you? How does that show up for you?
Imposter syndrome. I feel like it never got me. And I think a lot of it is because I knew that the fundamentals of the field were strong from a client standpoint. Like, my introduction to coaching was as a practice client. I always went through it. I was a guinea pig for a lot of her people. I loved it. And I knew from a firsthand experience how much I got out of a coaching session. So I knew that the fundamentals of the field were correct. And I think a lot of people who come to coach training, they've never had a coaching session. And the design of the program is literally designed for people to be coached, in the 2-hour training sessions so that they can understand, oh, okay, this is amazing. Like, I really like this part. Like when my coach interacts with me like this, and I know I got so much value from being coached that it's really baked into the whole, experiential engaged training program. The and so my hope is that alleviates the imposter syndrome of the people going through the program because they feel, oh, wow, the practice works. The practice works. It's worked on me. I know what it
Mhm.
feels like. And then to be able to deliver coaching on a weekly basis as well, there's just so much practice time and repetition and try out different things that simply showing up and listening and asking those powerful questions, doing a lot of the things that we talk about in the training, it it provides so much value. There's so much value created in that setup. So then you have uh, the next biggest leap, I feel like, is the imposter syndrome around getting clients, around establishing a business or getting hired. And that is something that a lot of people take on with trepidation. I don't, I can understand that. And I was, financially month to month for like years, just making by with only coaching clients. And I feel that. I know what that pain feels like. It's scary. It feels like a lot of uncertainty, a lot of, taking deep breaths. However, if you're doing it for the sake of a larger mission and vision, again, going back to the thing we talked about at the beginning, uh, it's imposter syndrome is a luxury that you simply can't afford. It's like, that's fine. Okay, you may feel that way, but the mission is requiring this of you. So step up and do it. If it's not you, who's it going to be? Who is going to have these conversations that change people's lives if it's not you? You almost have a responsibility to get out there and do the thing that needs to get done. So go do the thing. And imposter syndrome, lovely, but it's a luxury to feel that. The mission requires different.
So I'm hearing a tip there for people, and I work with a lot of leaders who face the imposter syndrome as well. It's like focusing on your why and the vision and mission can help you to kind of maybe overcome that imposter.
I was working with Marshall Goldsmith. We were in Dubai, and we had this amazing session where it was after we, given our presentations, and he asked a couple of the presenters to hang out. And you're like, it's one of those surreal moments. Like, is this really happening? Oh my, how many more surrealities can we, that's a good one. I like that one. How many surrealities can we add to this soup, right? And he stopped dead in the tracks. He stopped me dead in the tracks and said, okay, here's the deal. This is not about you. Full stop. And the sooner you get, this is not about you, the sooner you're able to roll up your sleeves and do the work that needs to get done without yourself in the way. From my experience, when people are establishing a coaching practice, myself included, getting yourself set is a full 50% of the work. And most people assume that they can set themselves, that should just be the assumption or the given or the taken for granted, but it's not. You matter so much in your mindset, your heart set, the way that you show up for the sake of the mission, that the mission requires you to get over yourself to do the thing that needs to get done. And month after month, I live that on the financial precipice of, with a 1-year-old and then a 3-year-old and another 1-year-old. And it was, did I get the client? Did I make the pitch? Did it work? And in that space, month to month, what happened after a period of time, there becomes such a trust in the process, such trust in your work. And that's where I feel like, for me, like when I go into, okay, how do I keep myself grounded? How do I find that insight? Like, how do I stay with myself? As long as I'm working, I know that things are going to be okay, that we're going to be safe. And that feels intense. And maybe it is, but that's what worked for me. And it continues to work for me. So when faced with these really hard decisions, when faced with different directions, different opportunities to go, the place I go is, what does the mission require? It's not about me. It's not really about anybody. It's about what's required out there. Yeah,
And the mission is bigger than you, is what I'm hearing.
absolutely. One of the things about a bigger game too is the idea is you're not really playing a bigger game if you were to disappear and everything would stop. It's intense. Like, are you really carrying on a mission that has a larger vision, even larger than you? That's an exciting invitation. It really is. And I was fortunate enough to get that at the age of 27, embody it, and get it from one of the founders of the fields of coaching, Laura Whitworth, and to have her like literally hold my hand and say, "Go, you're ready, go, do the thing, change education, make it work." And yeah, I can still remember that conversation very clearly.
That's powerful, John. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And you've created some really great tool and contributed a lot to coaching industry. And I know one of the tools around this is the inner critic tool. What led
Absolutely.
you to create that?
The inner critic tool is, uh, well, okay, it comes from, I mean, it's a long history, right, of tools that are repurposed and used. And uh, my understanding of inner critic, it in counseling, it can be called the parental voice. In I forget what it's called in NLP, like the inner gremlin. I think it was a gremlin,
Yeah.
tame your gremlin at some point in time. Sports psychology. What does the inner game of tennis? Galway. I forget what he calls it. It might be inner critic. Um, there is this idea that if you personify the critical voices that we tell ourselves, then you can create a little bit of distance between yourself and that inner voice, that negative inner voice. And then you can make it, different characters. And when I was trained in inner critic work, gremlin work, we were really encouraged to make it really scary and big and huge and, things that you needed to be, to really personify the visual aspect of the pain it creates. But when I was working with students, I realized very quickly that was not that was not going to go over very well. And a couple of students I was working with, come home and their parents were very concerned. Like, what did you were talking about? Basically, you create a monster, and now my child is talking about what is going on? And we talked to the parents and explained why and where, and then that's when I realized, no, I can't just take this tool and use it as is when you're working with students. Let's modify and make the inner critic all like small, cartoonish. Um, do some of that work already of transformation, the inner transformation work. When I did that, I realized the students liked it more. I stopped getting concerned parents calling me saying, okay, I could explain to parents a little more like what was happening, like, and why it's working. And then I started with the executives doing the same things. I was like, okay, we don't need to create these huge, monstrous things that, some 400-pound gorilla in the corner that is just sitting there. Like, even though it might feel like that, take that 400-pound gorilla and make it 4 pounds, and even make it less. Like, make it 4 ounces and make it sit over there, or 4 grams or whatever, whatever metric system you use, whatever measurement of mass you use. And it's better because it even plays into theory, because you're taking something that is extremely challenging and close to us, and we often identify with, and then you're putting all of that into a handle, and then you're moving it out just slightly, and then facilitating a conversation with something that's already been diminished, something that is small and already somewhat transformed. It was even more effective, and the students liked it. And that was the tool. That was the modification that was needed. And now, I got a couple. I chat with them every now and then. It's interesting. They become friends after a while. I mean, it's so like, if you're not in coaching, this sounds like bizarre, but it does. It becomes like, oh, you again. That's cute. Here we are dealing with the 4-gram gorilla again. gosh, Raj. It goes on and on.
Yeah. You have a whole team, don't you, by the end of
Mm.
a whole team of, you got your future self there and inner critics and inner wisdom. And yeah, mine is Regina, Snow White's stepmother. She likes to show
Okay.
up. Yeah, that character. So sometimes I get asked, John, why a fictional character or a cartoon character? And people are often tempted to say, oh, my inner critic is my mother or a teacher. Why personify it as kind of a fictional or cartoon character?
Well, it's similar to when, people use like real people names for a concept or a meme, and then you happen to have that name. It's really unfortunate. And it's same ideas, so I know that some, like, for instance, someone named their inner critic Sam or Bob or whatever, then you meet a Bob, oh,
There's an association there, isn't there?
like, and okay, like, that's not great. So that's one. And I mean, that reason alone is enough. It's just don't do it. And it's so easy to not do it and then just create a different name, create a different thing for it. And it's more useful too to have I think a cartoony name, because it makes it a little more playful. It doesn't, yeah, it's just another element of play that you want to have with it that just avoids a pretty serious trap if it comes up.
And some people have strong internal dialogue, don't they? So it really depends on how the world is represented for you. Some of us are highly visual, some are highly kinesthetic, others are auditory. And I've heard people say before, I don't have inner dialogue or I don't have a voice, yet they are stuck or there is a block. So how would they identify an inner critic?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't run across much of that, of people who say they don't have an inner dialogue. But I mean, in our own minds, there's a certain separation, privacy. I don't know, there's a certain place where there's only one set of footprints, it's your own. And there's work that only you can do. And my experience is that everyone has some dialogue, some image. It mostly shows up as, words, but not always. But there is something that it's it's a regulator. It's a way for our brains to keep us safe. It's a way for us to not do every idea that pops in our head. So there's a real valuable use to the function of an inner critic, and it's a necessary part of us. I've come to the terms with it's a part that deserves love and respect, like all aspects of self. But it's also one that needs to be used mindfully in a certain way at certain times. And when there's that love and appreciation for that part of us, then we take away the judgment of it. And then you get out of the cycle of judging yourself harshly because you're judging yourself. And then, oh no, I'm judging myself harshly again. Stop judging. I'm judging my judging. And then people get into a judging cycle. And that's what coaching stops. And people judge themselves, judge everything so much. And what coaching does is it replaces judgment with curiosity. That's an amazing thing. That's an amazing thing. And then when you do that with your inner critic, the places where you judge yourself the most, and you just for 5 minutes take away that judgment and instead bring curiosity, this is where lives get changed. Those 5 minutes might change your life. It's revolutionary in the sense that people might go their whole entire life with a private judgment that they've never actually said out loud. They've never actually told another human being. Might go their whole entire life. And when you're working with a coach, you have the opportunity to say it out loud and knowing that when you're working with a coach in that space, they're not going to judge you. They're going to, I mean, if they're a coach that's trained, they're going to approach it with curiosity. They're going to ask yourself okay, let's explore it. And then how do you want to use it? How do you want to even empower yourself in this part of yourself? Yeah, make friends. I was talking to a friend and she was having a hard time with something. She handled the situation not the best. Wish she had handled it differently and was beating herself up slightly for it. And we're just talking about it. And she got to a point saying, like this part of myself, like this is how it shows up. And the question was, okay, so what happens when you love that part too? And you could just see it. Like it just like, well, you could just feel it's almost like the thought train just threw the brake on. And it's like a whole thought train. And that's what you get when you're in a coaching session. The whole thought train that thought train may have continued the rest of her life. Just chugging away, just zooming by. At least you stop for 30 seconds. And and the track will never be the same again. That question, once asked, once experienced, you can't ever be the same after it. You maybe go back to an old habit, sure, but there's still a little bit of a habit of breaking that thought train. Yeah, that's what you want, and that's what coaching sessions do.
That's huge, isn't it? Really shifting patterns and programs and belief systems with that. So replacing judgment with curiosity. And as I was listening to you, John, talking about, the brain and how it's designed to keep us safe. And I read a meme once that said, don't believe everything that your brain says. And it was something a bit more colorful than that, but it stuck with me. It really did.
That's right.
So how would you summarize kind of your thoughts from this, John?
It's helpful to have a compass, to have a strong decision, especially for big decisions, to have a strong decision-making process, or at least a benchmark. And for me, it's mission-based. Like, what does the mission require? What does it require of me? What does it require of other people? If we're really truly doing this, it requires people to be all in. And there's a certain energy that gets created when it feels like everyone is like, the term that we call is 100. And it's when, you're giving 100 and the other person is giving 100, you can feel it. And there's a certain level of, I don't know, giddy excitement. And there's a certain level of like, yeah, you're rowing, I'm rowing, like we're in this. And when inner critics come up in that space, even 100 space, they don't hit the same way. They become more like, that's interesting. Oh, that's here. How can I use it? They don't become, the inner critic's right. I'm just going to shrink and become smaller and go away. And yeah, you're right. This mission is too big for me. This is too little. Like I'm over my head. Like that's when it feels like imposter. Like that's when imposter syndrome creeps in. That's when you feel like, okay, like, unsettled, that kind of thing. I go there sometimes, but the tools and the robustness of the people and organization around me, and it's like a buoy. It just pops back up in the water. It can't stay down long. It just can't. You can't. The mission doesn't require it. And it's not a toxic it's not a toxic positivity. It's not like, hey, like the mission requires this so that it requires me to stay positive and all the time. It's not that. It's not one answer or trying to make everything feel or trying to tell people not to feel a certain way. No. Sometimes you got to feel the sad, you got to feel the hard, you got to feel the anger, you got to feel the feels. That's what the mission requires. But it's a really lovely question to ask. And it's one that I really do lean on a lot.
And what I'm taking away from this is to have grace with yourself. I mean, it's human to experience imposter syndrome. It's human to experience the inner critic. You mentioned yours, and you're very successful. Some of the most successful people in the world. I read a quote. Einstein experienced the imposter syndrome. Maya Angelou, there's actually a quote from her where she said, I've written 11 books, but each time I think, they're going to find out now. I run a game on everybody and they're going to find me out. Yet she never let it stop her, did she? She continued with the mission.
The mission required her to keep going. And it's so lovely that it's not about you. It really is. It's so lovely because it's like you get the opportunity to take risk. You have an opportunity to take risk. And you can't, I was looking at this one thing, and then I know over time, but this one study, it boiled down to you can't experience flow unless there is an opportunity for failure. How are you doing giving yourself opportunities for failure? Isn't that amazing?
It is. It is. Thank you, John. Some great words of wisdom. So, you can't experience flow unless there is opportunity for failure. So, yeah. And you learn so much from that as well. And maybe we'll pick more of this up next time. This has been a great conversation, John. Thank you for sharing your words of wisdom and knowledge with us today.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you for creating the space and letting me do my thing and say things that I've been reading and researching and feeling and thinking about. It's really a lovely opportunity to put words to a lot of what I feel like I've been exploring week to week. And it's so fun to do these, and appreciate this audience in this space.
Thank you, John. We're grateful for you, grateful for the audience. Send us your questions and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you. Bye.